He was simply dropping off his kids at the store. But Officer Doyle pinned him to the hood without checking a single ID. In front of bystanders and his terrified children, they humiliated a man they believed was powerless, not knowing he was Police Chief Daniel Crane. One voice from the crowd and a single radio call flipped the entire situation on its head. But just wait until you see how this powerful story unfolds, and why, in the end, justice didn't just return, it roared. It was the kind of Saturday morning Atlanta was known for: quiet, golden, touched by just enough breeze to rustle the dogwoods lining the edges of the residential blocks. The sun hung low, softening the outlines of homes and storefronts, warming the sidewalks where a few neighbors watered plants or wheeled strollers toward coffee shops. It felt like any other morning in a peaceful suburb. Captain Daniel Crane sat behind the wheel of his family SUV, one hand resting lazily on the steering wheel as the other adjusted the rearview mirror. Tall and broad-shouldered, he was a man used to carrying weight, the kind that didn't show on his face but in his eyes that had seen more than most, and still held a patience few could maintain. But today, Daniel wasn't the police chief. He wasn't wearing the stars, the gun, or the uniform that carried command. He wore jeans and a gray hoodie, soft at the elbows, a Braves cap pulled low over his brow. To his kids, he was just Dad. That was enough. In the back seat, 11-year-old Kamara and her little brother Malik were laughing about something they'd seen on a cereal box. Their voices were the soundtrack to his morning, familiar, innocent, grounding. They were headed for groceries, a simple errand, a peaceful start to the weekend. As he pulled up to the curb in front of the supermarket, Daniel turned to them with a half-smile. "Go pick a good watermelon," he said, voice warm. "I'll park and meet you inside." Kamara gave him a thumbs up. Malik was already unbuckling, ready to race his sister to the produce section. Then, a shadow. Before Daniel could shift the car into park, a police cruiser rolled up sharply behind him. The driver's door flew open. Out stepped a young officer in a fresh, stiff uniform, the creases still visible. His nameplate read, Doyle. His walk was brisk, calculated. His expression? Tense, suspicious, as if the calm of the morning was a problem that needed correcting. "Hey!" Doyle barked, already approaching the SUV. "What are you doing here? You can't stop in the lane like that." Daniel rolled down the window and met the officer's eyes with measured calm. "Just dropping my kids. I'll move in a second." His voice was level. No attitude, no challenge, just clarity. But Doyle's lips curled. "I don't like your tone." He took another step forward. Out of the vehicle, hands on the hood, now. For a second, time didn't move. Kamara turned at the sound, Malik still beside her. They saw their father open the door slowly, carefully, just like he'd taught them people should do when police approached. They watched his hands, deliberate, visible. He stepped out. Doyle didn't wait. In 2 strides he was beside Daniel, grabbing him by the arm and pushing him toward the hood of the car. "What's this about?" Daniel began, but the officer cut him off. "Don't talk. Hands flat. Keep your feet spread." Across the parking lot, voices quieted. Heads turned. A woman halted her cart mid-roll. A man pulling out his keys paused mid-step. The world around them felt like it took a breath and held it. Kamara ran toward the scene, her sneakers slapping against the pavement. "That's our dad. He didn't do anything," she shouted, eyes wide with panic. Malik, behind her, clung to her backpack strap like a lifeline. His eyes were already red. Neither officer looked her way. Another man emerged from the second cruiser, older, stiffer, built like a stack of files and procedures. Officer Trace Banks. His walk was less aggressive, but no less sure. He glanced at the scene with disinterest. A civilian in a business jacket had also stopped, watching from just beyond the bumper of a parked car. He didn't move, just observed, arms folded. Banks squinted at Daniel being pressed against his own car. "Another obstruction case," he muttered to no one in particular. "Black guy out of uniform. Never fails to raise eyebrows." There was no question in his tone. No doubt. No courtesy. No one asked for identification. No one asked a single question. No one wondered why the man they were handling looked more composed than they did. Because they weren't looking. They were assuming. And for Daniel Crane, chief of police, father of two, public servant for over 18 years, that was all they needed. The moment hung in the air like a tremor, visible in the faces of the crowd that had begun to gather. Shoppers stood still. A man holding a bag of oranges didn't move. A teenage girl stopped pushing her grandmother's wheelchair. All eyes were on the tall black man being searched against the hood of his own SUV. Not shouting, not resisting, just enduring. Daniel's fingers were splayed across the hot metal of the hood. His wallet had already been taken from his back pocket, but instead of examining its contents, Officer Doyle tossed it to the ground like it was litter. The leather folded open midair, and a gold badge slipped out, glinting for a second in the morning sun before it landed on the pavement. "I said check the ID," Daniel repeated, his voice still steady, though firmer now. "I'm Chief Crane, Stoutwood District. That's my badge." Doyle's face hardened. He gave a short, sharp laugh, one without humor. "Don't play smart. You're already in enough trouble." He didn't look down, didn't even glance at the badge that now lay at his feet. From across the lot, Kamara screamed, "Daddy, tell them who you are. Why are they doing this?" Her voice cracked as the confusion and fear in her chest turned into something raw. Malik clutched her arm, tears rolling down his cheeks. Daniel closed his eyes briefly, then opened them again. Not a flicker of rage in them, only something deeper, something learned over years of having to remain still when others could afford to shout. His jaw tightened, but he didn't break. That was the moment she appeared. Miss Harper, a figure known by nearly everyone in the neighborhood, retired schoolteacher, local organizer, the kind of woman whose voice carried the weight of generations. She had marched in the 60s. She had spoken at City Hall. And when she saw Daniel Crane pinned like a suspect in front of his crying children, something in her ignited. She didn't hesitate. Her voice rose like thunder. "What do you think you're doing? That man is Chief Crane." Everything stopped. Doyle froze mid-motion. Banks, standing a few feet behind, visibly tensed. The color drained from his face like ink fading from paper. "What?" Doyle muttered, almost inaudibly, his gaze flicking toward the ID on the ground for the first time. But even now, he didn't reach for it. Miss Harper was already dialing her phone. Her fingers were steady. "I'm calling the commissioner," she said flatly. "You just laid hands on your superior. You don't walk this back." And then the sirens came. Not aggressive, not chaotic, but deliberate. The kind that signals that people in high places are on their way, and it's no longer just about what happened. It's about who saw it. In under 5 minutes, a county sheriff's vehicle rolled in, followed closely by 2 cars bearing the city's seal. From another side of the lot, 2 reporters had arrived, cameras in hand, notebooks ready. Doyle's breath caught as he realized who was watching now. The eyes that mattered had arrived. Then, from inside Doyle's own radio, a crackle broke the silence. A voice spoke, firm, authoritative, unmistakable. "This is the police commissioner. Confirm the identity of the detained individual. I repeat, you have just detained your precinct chief, Captain Daniel Crane." The entire parking lot turned to ice. Doyle took a slow step back. Banks lowered his eyes. The children were now in Miss Harper's arms, her shawl wrapped protectively around their shoulders. Daniel hadn't moved. He didn't need to. The truth had walked in on its own, and it had brought company. Daniel Crane stood tall beneath the morning sun, his figure casting a long shadow on the pavement. He didn't need to speak loudly. He didn't raise a hand or a fist. His silence was heavier than confrontation, more exacting than rage. He didn't look at Doyle or Banks. He didn't need to. Their faces said enough. The shift from control to consequence visible in their posture, in the way they couldn't meet his gaze. His voice, when it came, was even. Cold, not with anger, but with clarity. "Do you understand what you've done?" No reply. Only the distant hum of a cooling engine. A single press camera clicked. "You didn't just violate a citizen's rights," Daniel continued, pausing between each word. You did it in front of his children, in front of his community, in full view of the very people you swore to serve. The words were sharp, deliberate, and absolute. He turned slightly then, finally letting his eyes settle on them. And that is why you're done here. As of this moment, you are relieved of duty. No ceremony, no shouting, just the finality of truth being spoken by someone who had earned the right to speak it. By sundown, news of the incident had already spread. But Daniel didn't seek the spotlight. He didn't speak to the press that day. Instead, he spent the evening with Kamara and Malik, listening to their fears, answering their questions, helping them find steady ground again. The next morning, the mayor's office released a formal statement. Officers Doyle and Banks were terminated for misconduct, specifically misuse of authority, racial profiling, and failure to follow proper identification protocols. An internal review was launched. City Hall pledged transparency. But Daniel's message wasn't just for institutions. It was for the children. At a community center event held later that week, Daniel stood before a crowd of over 200 students, parents, teachers. Cameras were present, but his voice was for the youth. I will not allow you to grow up afraid of those in uniform. I will not allow fear to pass for order. And if we want the badge to mean honor again, then that starts with me. I have to earn it. Every day. The words resonated far beyond the room. School boards reached out. Faith leaders offered support. Across the city, murals began to appear, not of Daniel in uniform, but of him standing between his children and two officers, his hand held protectively out. In one of those murals, Kamara and Malik are holding hands, and at a city rally weeks later, it was they who took the microphone. Kamara spoke first, steady, confident. Our dad didn't get angry. He got stronger. Malik followed with a whisper into the mic. We're proud of him. And the crowd applauded, not for punishment, but for the reminder of what strength can be when it's rooted in restraint. By October, Daniel launched the Initiative for Trust and Truth, a citywide reform program requiring cultural awareness training, youth engagement forums, and mandatory civilian oversight on traffic stops. Every new recruit would spend time in classrooms, not just in simulations. One evening, sitting on the porch beneath soft amber light, Kamara leaned her head on her father's shoulder and asked the question she had been carrying quietly for weeks. Dad, did you forgive them? Daniel took a breath, then smiled faintly. I did, he said, but I didn't forget. And we don't forget, Kamara. We remember, not to hold on to anger, but to be better than what hurt us. Always. She nodded slowly, and there, beneath the sky starting to shift toward night, a father and daughter sat without fear, without armor, just strength, just love.